For after city council.
Good afternoon.
Hey Jerry, I'm Peter King. I'm the Assistant City Attorney. Nice to meet you.
Glad to meet you.
Yeah.
You on board?
Yeah, I'm Eddie's sidekick.
That's right. I remember he mentioned he was recruiting, so
Yeah.
congratulations.
It's 25 years with the City of LA, and took a nice little early retirement package, and a couple of years off. I was getting bored.
All right, well.
And now I'm not bored at all.
This will keep you busy. This will keep you busy.
Oh my gosh, it's spinning some days. But anyway, it's so nice to meet you.
Well, welcome. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Be sitting in today.
All right.
I'm probably a little more low key than Eddie, but anyway, I understand we have a full complement of lawyers and former lawyers, and so I think we're
Our board, yeah, pretty much.
yeah. So that's good. Well, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. Welcome.
Thank you.
What gave it away? in.
Let's sit on the other side. I'm gonna sit on the other side. Give me some room. Oh. Got it.
I was told to put an extra chair because Cindy will be coming in.
Oh, Cindy, yeah, Cindy Bridie's. It's fine. Put it right here. I forgot. No. It's not live podcast.
No, but I was told to put it on YouTube and then.
Give me the code.
And then also give me the DVD.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So make sure we can hear all the signals.
Just the DVD, just like normal. The private YouTube channel and the DVD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell Rick to make sure it's private. And not trying to start the recording at 3:30 or you want me to wait until?
It's probably going to be about 10 minutes. Chair reads late today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, just look for the cue. Yeah.
you'll give me a thumbs up
Yeah.
or something and then I'll start the
Yep.
recording? Okay, great.
Thank you.
That sounds good. Thanks.
Test. Yes. Can you, do you want the?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Palm Springs Administrative Appeals Board meeting. This special meeting of the Administrative Appeals Board is hereby called to order. As first order of business, would you please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask the city clerk to please call roll of all board members present.
Board Member Cleary?
Here.
Vice Chair Howard?
Here.
Chair Reed?
Here.
With Bruce Cornander absent and John Kearns absent.
Okay, very good. The next order of business is the acceptance of the agenda. At this time, a motion would be in order that we accept the agenda as proposed.
I'll move to accept the agenda.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let the record show the motion's passed by a vote of 3-0. Next order on the agenda is the election of the chairperson and vice chairperson of this board. And for that, I'll defer to the city clerk for comment.
Chair Reed, we placed this on the agenda because typically the boards and commissions choose a new chair and vice chair the first meeting after July. However, after this agenda was posted, there was an item placed on the city council's agenda, which is a resolution to extend the time for boards and commissions to choose officers until January of 2019. And that's to coincide with the fact that we have extended the terms for an additional 6 months while we do some enhanced recruitment. So with that, I believe it would be appropriate to postpone this item until July.
January.
January.
Okay. Is there any comment or question from my fellow board members? Otherwise, I would propose that we defer elections until January 2019 to accommodate council's request.
I have no objection.
No objection.
No objection. So with that, then I assume I'll remain chair at least until January 2019, and Mr. Howe remain vice chair. Very good. Okay, do we have any registered public comments that are unrelated to the two agenda items?
No general public comment?
Okay. At this time, we would usually open up the floor to public comment related to issues that are relevant to come before this board. But there being no public comments registered, we'll move on to agenda item number 1. Before we get started, I wanted to mention to those of you in the public who are present how we will proceed today. We have 2 administrative hearings that we'll be overseeing. The way we proceed is we start with the City of Palm Springs presenting their case. We have 2 representatives from the Vacation Rental Enforcement Department. They determine which one will present the case. Following that, board members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the city, to request testimony or documents. And following that, we will then allow the petitioner, the appellant, to present their case. At that time, we may have questions of you. We may ask for documents or ask you to testify under oath. Following that, we do have an opportunity for public comment related to that agenda item, to that case. So if you're in the audience and you have something you'd like to bring to our attention, even if you're not involved in the case, you may do that during the public comment period. The city will then have an opportunity to rebut or respond to any new issues that the homeowner, the petitioner, may have raised. And following that third phase of the hearing, we close evidence, which means we're done hearing from all persons who have come before us. And then the board, the 3 of us who are present, will deliberate up here in the open, and you will actually witness us making a decision. And we'll render a final decision today. So with that, let's proceed with agenda item number 1. This is the appeal of the administrative decision that George Patrick, and I'll try to pronounce your last names correctly, Moultrup, and Caitlin Ann Litzinger are permanently ineligible to operate a vacation rental in the city of Palm Springs, and the administrative fine for operating an unregistered vacation rental property, the fine of $5,000, and the property is located at 1481 North Fiesta Road in Palm Springs. With that, I'll now turn it over to the city for the presentation of the case.
Thank you, Chair Reed, and hello, distinguished board. The property located at 1481 North Fiesta Road in Palm Springs has not been issued a vacation rental registration certificate by the city as of the date that we issued the administrative citation on May 17th, 2018. Staff has determined that the current owners have, without a registration certificate, advertised and operated the property as a vacation rental. We are noting that the previous owners of this property had obtained a legal vacation rental certificate from our office, and the city ID number that was assigned to that certificate was city ID number 2100. The property was managed by an agency in Palm Springs, Altamira. These previous owners canceled their registration certificate effective on February 23rd, 2018. We have included the Palm Springs municipal codes that apply to this matter and the issuance of our citation. And specifically, I would like to bring your attention to some of the details around the violation. There was an advertisement of the property. We found it on Airbnb. It was advertised as Fiesta House Private Downtown Oasis. The advertisement number was 23527350. And the advertisement of the property included the following. The entire house would be available for rent. The ad states that it's available for your Palm Springs getaway. It does include many of the city's rules for registered vacation rentals, such as minimum age, music, and those sorts of things. And it does include a Palm Springs city ID number 2100 that I mentioned earlier. Again, that number was issued to the home when it was registered by the previous owners. At the time that we found the ad, it was not valid. There are 9 reviews for the property. Many include the owner's name, Patrick, also there are comments on there from the host that says we love hosting people in our mid-century home. The ad states that there's a self-check-in with a smart lock. It states specifically that the property is managed by the owners. And our office reached out to do an inquiry to see if the host would allow booking on a short-term basis. Our Officer Williams is here today, and he can provide more information around this and answer any questions that you have. But I do want to highlight that there was an inquiry from our officer for the dates between July 1st and July 8th, of course, 7 nights. It was confirmed by the owner as available with an invitation to book. A special offer came in as well. And there is conversation that's custom between our officer and the owner regarding identification and whether a dog is permitted, etc. So based on the advertisement information that we found and the inquiry that our officer made, our office issued citation AB 0145 in the amount of $5,000 to the owners who are on title, Mr. George Patrick Maltrup and Ms. Caitlin Ann Litzinger. And the violation is operating a vacation rental without a vacation rental registration certificate. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And again, I have Officer Williams here as well. Thank you.
Hey, do either of my fellow board members have any questions for the city? I do intend to hear from Officer Williams.
Not at this time.
Okay.
I have no questions.
Okay, may I bring him up?
Yes, please.
Okay, Officer Williams, please.
Good afternoon. Yes.
Can you please state your name and your position with the city?
David Williams, Code Compliance Officer with the City of Palm Springs Vacation Rental Compliance Department.
Officer Williams, are you familiar with the matter that we're discussing?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Can you please explain what occurred that led up to the your issuance of the citation?
We received a community lead, an inquiry as to whether or not the city ID number in the ad was a valid number just because it looked odd. It was a 2100 number. Most of them are 4 digits, but they don't end in 00. So I looked into the matter and found out that yes, in fact, that was a valid number, but it had been canceled February 23rd. So it was determined that it was the previous agency that canceled the number, and the ad had a new person, which was not the old agency. So I sent a booking request or a booking inquiry as to whether or not I could rent the property, and I said, good evening. I wanted to see if your lovely home is available 7/1/18 to 7/8/18. It would be for my husband and I, as well as my sister and brother-in-law. We will be in Palm Springs for our parents' 60th wedding anniversary. While I love them dearly, I do not want to stay with them in their condo. Please let me know and I will book. I am new to this, so my niece is helping me navigate this site. A short while later on the same day, I received a response that said, hi, Kathy, we would be happy to have you stay with us. I will approve you for the booking. Will you be bringing any dogs? Also, I need a picture of a current ID emailed to me. I'm sure this will make your trip to Palm Springs much more enjoyable. I responded shortly thereafter, also on the same day, which was May 16th. Perfect, thank you. No, we're not bringing any dogs with us. I'd much rather bring in the dog than my brother-in-law. I can scan my ID at work tomorrow and send it to you then. At that time, I received an automated decline notice from Airbnb, and a few minutes after that, I received another custom email from Mr. Maltrup that said, the dates are still open. I declined your booking because of an issue with Airbnb. If you still want to book for the first week of July, just rebook and message me, and it should be fine. And I responded, "Thank you, I was so confused."
Any questions for Officer Williams?
If you don't mind.
Please, go ahead.
So Officer Williams, did you rebook then after the declination that you received?
No, not after that, because it was already booked. He already said that it was a mistake and I could go ahead and book it. And you can't actually book it without a credit card, so we just actually inquire as to whether it's available.
Oh, okay, so, so it was, you did the initial inquiry, it was declined, then, you got a contact from the homeowner, and they indicated you could rebook.
Yes, I initially sent an inquiry to the property owner. He verbally approved it, and then the automated decline came through, and then he said that that was a mistake and to redo it.
Okay, okay. All right, so, one of the questions I had was regarding the permit. You received a community lead, that means someone called in or notified you that there was a questionable permit number?
We get several emails a week from several different people asking us to inquire whether or not this number is valid, or this property is registered, or this person is legal. So we eventually go through every one of them. And
Okay, so in looking through this one, you researched it, you found there had been a permit at one time, but that you received a notification. Is that the document that's included in the packet, Ms. Severin's packet? And it's not a stamped, page number stamp, but it says at the top of it, City of Palm Springs owner's request to close TOT permit? Okay, so that's the
Correct.
document
Yes, it
you
is.
indicated. So that was received by the city, which is an owner's request to terminate the permit.
to terminate the old permit, correct?
Now, it seems to me that the indication on that request was forwarded to the city on, sorry, it's forwarded to the city on February 23rd?
It looks like it was sent on February 27th, but the effective date on it is February 23rd.
Okay, so this is a form that was filled out by the individual requesting that the permit be canceled.
The agency, I believe, yes.
All right, so, the agency. So when you're saying the agency, is that the Altamira Vacation Rentals?
Correct.
So they're not the holders of the permit, am I correct?
If I can jump in, they are not. So under our ordinance, an owner can manage their own property, or they can have an agent manage their property. In this case, the previous owners had Altamira, which is an agency, manage their property. So Altamira sent this in on behalf of the owner. This form is required when someone closes out their permit. It's not enough to just let the registration lapse. You actually have to fill this form out. And the ordinance does require that for a change of ownership, this needs to be closed out and a new registration application needs to come in for the next owner, should they decide they want to rent the property.
So the permits themselves are not transferable?
They are not.
Okay. All right. Okay, that answers my questions. Thank you.
Anybody else for Officer Williams?
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll ask my fellow board members, any further questions for the city at this time?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So at this time, we'll call the appellants forward, and I don't know who's present or who's going to be presenting, but either or both of you can present.
Myself.
Okay, sir, please feel free to have a seat. Have you filled out our speaker form?
The brown paperwork?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we have the oath on file.
Very good. Okay, very good. Sir, so the way we operate is you have 10 minutes to present your case to the board. We may have questions for you or follow-up. That does not erode your time. You exclusively have 10 minutes, and then we may take more time with you as we're asking questions or requesting information.
Understood.
So whenever you're prepared, please proceed.
So I am not disputing anything that the city has
given forward for this. It's definitely correct information. What I did want to show is I have the email. I don't know if everyone here has a copy of that. My wife and I had come to Palm Springs to actually purchase the house and a business at the same time. We were going through the process of closing on the house on Fiesta Road. Ended up closing at the end of February. We're also going through the process of purchasing Azul over on the main drive. I don't know if you're familiar with it, with Mr. Alibi. Well, unfortunately, at the last minute, during the escrow process, Mr. Alibi pulled out of the deal and sort of left us high and dry. And that's what precipitated us to have to rent the house for a short period of time. We're living back there now. Prior to us closing on the house, I had some communication with myself, my realtor, and the realtor for the property holder. And as you can see, I just printed the entire flow of this email, but on the second page, I specifically asked the realtor, Mr. Dalton. I said, it was on February 14th, and I asked him, I said, also I know the prior owner is short-term rentaling the house. Can we get some information as far as what we would need to do for that if we, ever wanted to do it? He came back later that afternoon and said, prior owner said, house is registered. You're good till this coming January, then must re-register with city. The registration number is attached to the current Airbnb. Airbnb ad if you need it, just cut and paste our ad if you need it, Emmett, and that was it. And we never really had any inclination to do that, to rent the house as it was, because, like I said, we were in the process of moving here. We love the city, and we were in the process of purchasing that property until, unfortunately, Mr. Alibi backed out on us at the last minute. And that's when we started renting the house. And in the midst of all that, it was 100% my fault for not looking more into it, I guess. I was a little overwhelmed with all the process of the due diligence and everything that was going on with the restaurant. But yeah, I should have looked into a little bit more as far as the process, but I just took the prior owner's word. I'm not quite sure why he did that. I can only assume that, I don't know, some frustration on his part. We had a little back and forth, and I don't know. I'm not going to make any assumptions on his thought process, but, so it unfortunately left us in this position.
Sir, I wanted to ask in your request for hearing, you mentioned one of the statements you made was we lived on property and only friends and family stayed with us. In terms of time period, if you can help us understand, was there a point in time where you were not living in the house and renting it?
Probably end of February sometime, or beginning of March, I believe. It was when the final deal sort of fell through with Mr. Alibi, and we ended up having to move back to Anaheim where we live. Okay.
So at the time that you rented the home for the short period of time, you weren't residing in the home?
No, we were there on and off because we had a lot of our property in the space, and then we ended up having to move things out and lock things up in the garage space that's attached to the side of the property. And so, and the reason I said a lot of our friends and family had stayed there is because we had allowed friends to stay there, and we had some friends come out from Chicago and stay with us, and we're just taking advantage of the house that we could rent it, and that ability to do so once the ability to live there had fallen through. So.
And where I was going with that, I wanted to confirm there's sort of three possibilities. One is that no one is living in the home's being rented, and a third party comes in, they pay you, and they stay in the home. The second possibility is you're living in the home, but you have someone else staying there while you're there, which is a different situation. And then third, you have people staying there, but you don't charge any kind of rent for like friends and family. Right. So it sounds like you had a combination of the first and the third one.
Yes, sir. We had about, there was at least 3 different occasions where we had people that we didn't know who would stay there, and my wife and I had just taken our stuff and gone back to Anaheim and stayed during that time period while we were trying to figure out what we were gonna do, and we're actually in the process of looking at another business in the city again, so hopefully that works.
Thank you. Mr. Howard, any questions?
The, Mr. Dalton, was the seller's agent?
He was my realtor, sir.
He was your realtor. Why does he say then just cut and paste our ad?
I think what
What
he
does
was
that mean?
doing is quoting from what, because I wasn't speaking directly to the homeowner, the prior homeowner. I think he was speaking to his realtor and speaking to him, and he had just sent that back to me.
So the information that you were getting there was your agent, the buyer's agent, passing along information apparently that he obtained from the seller.
Yes, sir.
What is
And-
it, what is it that you want us to do
My,
here
my
today?
request would be, like I said, my wife and I moved back in the house, and our intention would be, we understand that we did something that we shouldn't have done. It was miscommunication on our part, and like I said, I totally understand that I should have looked more into this. Obviously, at this point, I've looked into it in depth, and I totally understand the process. But we don't have any intention of renting the property or doing anything like that. But what I would hope is that instead of a full ban, that we could, have a 6-month suspension or whatever the case may be, and then the reduced fine, and just go on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cleary, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Very good. Anything else, sir, based on our questions?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this time, I want to ask the city clerk, do we have any individuals registered for public comment on this agenda item number 1?
No other comments?
Okay, thank you. There being no public comments, I'll turn back to the city for any rebuttal statements or evidence.
Thank you, Chair Reed. I would just like to mention that we have a very large educational component to our vacation rental program. We work with Airbnb and we work with HomeAway, and we have information on their website that alerts individuals that choose to host on those websites that they need to be registered, and it points them to our website. We've developed a very data-rich website. We have a lot of outreach, and it's unfortunate that this individual got poor advice. I can tell you that we have FAQs on our website specific for realtors. And one of the questions that we get from realtors is, what is recommended for potential homeowners that are considering applying? And we say a thorough review and understanding of the ordinance. And there are some of the details, and it said, additionally, please remind owners that the ordinance clearly states that an owner may not advertise or operate without a certificate. So we try very hard to educate owners and to educate stakeholders who are working with potential owners to understand the ordinance requirements. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the city? Final questions, Mr. Cleary, Mr. Howard?
I just wondered if you knew if the certificate, the notice of that the permit is being terminated.
Mm-hmm.
Does that get served on the homeowner? That a receipt of cancellation notice, for example. How do you know that your competitor or your next door neighbor who doesn't want you to run your business isn't filling out and sending to the city permit termination notices? So what's the homeowner how does the city ensure that the homeowner, in this case it's an agency that notifies the city, maybe they had a dispute with the homeowner, how does the city determine if the homeowner agrees with the agency and that they are surrendering their permit?
So, again, our process is that the owner has assigned an agent to work on their behalf. When we get this, it starts a process internally of closing out both the registration certificate and the TOT side of the house in finance. So we have communication for probably the next 90 days with the owner on the property. And what I would say is we deal with Altamira and other agencies and owners on a regular basis. We don't have any history of fraud or any concerns around that.
So is Altamira applying for the permit on behalf of the owner? I mean, can you just hire somebody to fill out your rental ordinance application?
The city recognizes several local, I'd call them agencies or businesses that register themselves as an agency within the city. And those agencies work very closely with the city, applying for new clients when they have new clients, and they close permits when their clients have sold or are being transferred to another agency.
The owner is ultimately responsible for the application. The agency fills it out. The owner signs the application. And so, again, the owner, the ordinance allows that.
Okay.
The ordinance allows an agency to manage certain aspects of the operation for an owner. It's common practice. Again, it's half of our vacation rental inventory is
Are
managed
managed
through an
professionally.
agency, yes. Yes.
And if I may,
Sure.
Peter King, Assistant City Attorney, essentially the agent is the alter ego of the owner, and the owner, unfortunately, if he's got a bad agent, is still subject to these rules as if the owner did it. So that's just the way the ordinance is written to capture these agency relationships. So.
Right, so the agency might know all the rules and regulations, and it's being imputed to the ownership. In this case, we want to impute knowledge of the ordinance to this owner, but it appears that there's a miscommunication between the actual owner who carries the permit in this case, who represented to the appellant's realtor that the permit was still good to go. Through the end of the year, which is just not true. I mean, it's not transferable, all these things you explained. Well, obviously the owner doesn't know the ins and outs of the permit that he or she owns, because the agency has filled out the application and is managing the rental. And so there's this disconnect. We're holding homeowners, the appellant, responsible for things that their agent is doing. And this agent, it just seems.
Yeah. Well, in this case, from what I think I heard, is that the former owner had a vacation rental agent. The agent that he's talking about is his realtor.
Right. There's two different agencies.
Right, and that realtor, as she pointed out, Suzanne, I'm sorry, Ms. Severin, she pointed out that that these real estate agents in the valley are supposed to know about this. We have all sorts of information out there to get them on board at that point where they're not necessarily representing as a vacation rental agent, but as an agent in the sale or the transaction. And, no matter how you slice it, that the ordinance requires registration, and I understand it's somewhat compelling in this situation that he got bad advice, but that's just what the rule is on the book, that new owners, and it's pretty clear that the old owner wanted out and filed the form or through his agent.
Well, the prior owner's agent.
That's correct. That's correct.
Filed the form. The prior owner didn't. When I said the owner told the agent, what I was speaking about was his real estate agent, the appellant's real estate agent, supposedly talked to the owners of the house, the sellers, about the vacation rentaling and was told that the permit is good to the end of the year. That's the owner, the former owner, telling the appellant's agent, the realtor, and he put it in quotes, you know, he cut and
So
pasted.
says the agent. That's what the agent is telling the
Right.
appellant.
Well, then we're going to get into conspiracy theories of everybody's lying, you know, so, you know.
I didn't clarify one bit, I guess, but anyway, I think what I was trying to say is that in this case, whether the old owners, whether the previous owner relied on his agent in, as you said, terminating the vacation rental registration. The old owner, as hired the agent and should have conveyed, if you will, that information to him. But in any event, the new owner, whether he got good advice or bad advice, and I think he conceded it, that he should have known that in the city of Palm Springs, when you buy a property and you're going to use it as a vacation rental, you need to register.
Right, but Ms. Severin just said that 50% of these vacation rentals are being applied by agencies that professionally manage these vacation rentals in the city. It's a big business now, I guess.
Sure.
So 50% of them.
Yeah.
And that the applications, the permits are not even being filled out by the owners of the residences.
I'm sorry, that's not correct.
Okay.
The application requires signature by the owner that they agree to the terms of the ordinance and they verified the information application is correct, and they did in fact hire an agency. So an agency can't just bring an application to our office with their signature. It has to have the owner's signature. In this particular case, the reason why the permit was closed is because the property sold. Altamira was advised the property was in escrow and provided our office with required documentation. If they would not have been provided this information and our office learned down the road, they would be subject to fines and penalties.
Well, Mr. Stark, the owner's signature bar is signed by somebody with an M initial, which is the name of the agent, Michael, at Altamira. So it
Correct.
appears that the owner's signature is not signed by the owner. It appears to be signed by somebody named Michael.
It's Michael Vallejo, and he is the president of Altamira Vacation Rentals, sir.
May I just clarify, though? Under our ordinance, there's a section that talks about agencies and their ability to represent the owners. And one sentence in here says, "The failure of an agent to comply with this chapter shall not relieve the owner of the owner's obligations under this chapter." So, and in practice, that's true too. So we're happy to work with an agency. That's the owner's desire. But for example, if that home gets a ticket, if there's communication, we communicate with an owner on something that we feel is important for the owner to know. And so the agents, we expect the agents to work on behalf of the owner, but this ordinance doesn't relieve an owner if an agent doesn't perform. So, it's the owner's preference to work through an agent. Some owners are very hands-on, some owners aren't. That's not something that we focus on. You know, the owner can decide under the ordinance to have an agent perform certain aspects of the requirements on their behalf.
But I think one of the things Mr. Cleary was talking about, the way I'm interpreting this is, when we look at this document, it's signed by the agency.
Yes, it is.
When we look at this from a legal perspective and the force and effect of the document, what concerns me about that is you as a city are requiring the owner to take a responsibility for this form and to sign the form, physically sign it. In order for an agency like Altamira and this gentleman, Michael, to sign on behalf of the owner, there would have to be some type of formal documentation, like a power of attorney, to act on behalf of the owner of the property. Otherwise, this signature, to me, doesn't seem to be compliant because it's not the signature of the owner, and it's also not the signature of anyone that we have evidence has legal authority to sign on behalf of the owner. So Mr. Cleary's concern would apply in this case because this agent of Altamira could sign this without the owner's knowledge. And you guys have no indication from this form that the owner had knowledge until you start processing the form.
Okay, the
So that
property was sold. The title report is in there, so the property was sold. And we checked title, we know the property was sold, and we've included that. So this form was received back in February. The ticket was issued a couple months after that. Yeah, so it was issued 3 months after that.
Now, I guess what I'm cautioning is on this form, this form may be more relevant to future cases that we have.
Okay.
It's just something that I don't know if my fellow board members agree, but I would look out and say, okay, I don't know about the validity of this form because I don't see that the owner signed it, or that there's another legal document indicating that the gentleman who works for Altamira has legal power to sign on behalf of the owner, not just the fact that he has a loose agency relationship as representing the property. You know,
Understood.
that's just my concern here.
Understood.
Haven't you said that the initial registration of the property is either with an agent or without an agent, and that if it is with an agent, that is duly documented at the time the property is permitted, correct?
That's correct.
And so I don't see once the agency relationship is established by that process, it's recognized by the city, and by virtue of the action taken by the owner the principal, in appointing the agent,
Right.
it's the same as any agency. It
Right.
prevails until there's some reason that it doesn't. So it doesn't seem troublesome to me that it's the agent's signature only that appears on the termination of the listing. May I also ask if this property had never been registered, would not the conduct of this appellant still constitute a violation of the ordinance?
That is correct.
So this prior permit thing, it seems to me, is not essential to our determination, or perhaps even relevant. I appreciate the appellant's interest in presenting that by way of explanation, but I don't think it makes any difference to our disposition of the appeal.
Well,
I'm sorry, are there any further questions for the city before we deliberate?
it just, if you had included the permit in the, we don't have the original permit that to determine whether or not there was agency or the owner's signature and everything else. We don't have that.
Peter King again. I would agree with your colleague, Vice Chair Howard. What happened before, I mean, as soon as the house sold, it's basically the registration is over. Unfortunately, the appellant got bad advice, and you could apply it to, hey, you know, we don't give speeding tickets on Tuesdays, but you have to know
Did
the law.
Mr. Kotkin tell you to say that?
No, actually, you know, I'm getting my advice from
I think that's an analogy I've heard before. I'm not sure, though.
Well, we've both been former prosecutors, so what can
There
I
you go. There you go.
But be that as it may, the point is, you know, it's unfortunate he got bad advice, but the way the law is written is that you need to know that you need to register.
And the bad advice was from his own agent.
And
Yeah, but at the
that's
time,
neither here nor
at the
there,
time,
almost.
the date of the email is the 14th of February. This termination of the permit was submitted on the 27th, so, you know, it was probably valid, and when his agent conveyed to him that it was registered. And then, unbeknownst to him, the permit was requested to be terminated.
The title report, that's page 40 in your package, says the transfer date is 2/23/18.
Right, so on the date of the closing, then
And I will mention too that we have, we don't put a list of registered vacation rentals on our website. That's based on advice from our police chief. He thinks that that's a public safety issue. So we routinely have people calling our office asking if a you know, if this property is registered and I'm thinking about buying something and gee, I'm a realtor for such and such an agency and how do I do this? And it's very common. I mean, we probably take 20 calls a week that are like that. So, and we're very accessible. We're very easy to reach. We often work weekends. We are, you know, and people call all the time. So, and we're happy to help. And, you know, we expect people who are investing in a property in the city to understand the rules. We've tried to make it very easy for them and accessible for them to find out what they need to do.
Thank you. Ms. Severin, I did notice that the page number is on there. I think earlier I said there was no page numbers. Maybe if you could shrink when you print them so that, because some of the page numbers are cut off.
I apologize.
No, that's all right. I'm just saying in the future, just, you know, somehow make it more visible would be helpful.
I will,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions, Mr. Howard?
No, thank you.
Great. So at this time, we'll close the evidence in this case and open up deliberations among the board members. Mr. Howard, do you want to lead the discussion?
I don't have any other comments, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cleary?
My comments are along the lines of my questioning in this case, which appears as though there is, in all acts that people are being sanctioned for, or ordinances are directing behavior to, when you're to be in violation of an ordinance, like in this case, there has to be some type of mental state or knowledge that that you have knowledge. And at the same time, Ms. Severin mentioned that ignorance of the law kind of is no excuse. We've all heard that. In this case, the appellant is admitting that they did not know the requirements as required to vacation rental. At the same time, it seemed though there was an attempt to make inquiry into it. He relied on a licensed professional real estate agent as to the status of whether it was legal to VR vacation rental, whatever the initials were. But the point being that they gave him the go-ahead. It was clear that the property was licensed and it was good to the end of the year. That was wrong, and the consequences are severe. In this case, we're all volunteers here. We're just residents of Palm Springs who volunteer to sit on this board as a check on the city and as a right that the people who are receiving these violations have to have another voice, to another tribunal, let's say, to where you can question the citation, its validity, and whether or not it should issue. And as we've been sitting at its board for a year or more now, I think, and have had many cases. You're not the first person to come before the board whose realtor told them the wrong information. And those people, like yourself, had operated under a mistaken belief. And it gives us no pleasure to sanction someone. The fine is large. Perhaps my board members will come up with an alternative fine or punishment, but it is a permanent ban on renting. And the fine figure is in the statute is significant. It's $5,000. So we very much are aware of that penalty. My hesitance in this case is it doesn't seem like the knowing and willing and going ahead with the violation, and who cares about the ordinance, and he did diligence, maybe not due diligence, but whatever due diligence means. I mean, he asked and was told, and it didn't seem to intend. So I would, my comments are around the nature of what he's asked for in his appeal is that he admits that he's in violation and would request the city to reduce the fine and make instead of a lifetime ban, ban advertising for 6 months. Mr. King, you represent the city. What is this? Has the city contemplated a position as to a fine reduction or a bar on advertising for 6 months as a sanction, as opposed to what the sanction is?
It has not contemplated that, and you can see by the resolutions, it's either or. Either he has or he hasn't, and the fines that are attached.
Is it the city's position that the board can recommend a reduction in the fine as a resolution in this case?
It's the position of the city that we have to follow the ordinance and what the fines allow in the ordinance.
I just want to make sure you're aware that at the last meeting, the board suspended $2,500 of the fine, but did uphold the permanent ineligibility in that situation.
So I think with the benefit of the city clerk's experience, I think what he said is you can modify the fine. And it has been done. There's precedent for that.
Right, so
You're referring to what the clerk just said?
Yes.
At the last meeting, the board took action to suspend $2,500 of the $5,000 fine, but they upheld the permanent ineligibility. At first, it was a 2-2 vote, and then they were contemplating whether or not you were going to need to review the video. Ultimately, they were able to, Board Member Cronander changed his vote to go with Cleary and Chair Reed to do the suspended fine, but the permanent ineligibility.
Mr. Mejia, could we revisit that? Could we take a look at that? I mean, I don't recall it that way, but it could be just my memory. Is there a way that we can check the notes on that real quick?
Yep, the minutes are in the packet.
Okay, okay.
Well, the city clerk is looking for the minutes. One thing I want to note is that the last hearing that we held was before the election that occurred recently, where the whole vacation rental concept was brought to the voters. Since that election has now been completed and the vacation rental ordinance stands, we would again ask the city attorney and the city clerk to be sure to educate city council when appropriate of cases where there are examples where city council may want to consider amending the virtual strict liability that they currently have under the current ordinance. I know the city attorney has even let the public know during some of the past hearings that after the election, if the ordinance was to be upheld, that city council would consider some substantial amendments to the ordinance. So I would say at this time, I would just ask the city to collect information as we go through hearings prior to the amendment or changes to the ordinance and feed information back to council. I've invited council members to these hearings, but as of today, we haven't had any council members present to witness our hearings.
I will ensure that that happens.
And the invitation stands.
Unfortunately, the way I read the ordinance, it doesn't give the board a lot of, well, we could modify this, condition that. It's really doesn't sort of give you that kind of discretion, just a cold reading. And I don't have the history that some of my colleagues do, but when I read it, it's very clear that there isn't a lot of discretion to condition or to modify the penalties.
And just to clarify, there is a correction. So one of the motions was to suspend the fine down to $2,500. That motion didn't carry. However, ultimately what did resolve is that they upheld the permanent ineligibility but overturned the entire fine.
Oh, so the whole fine was suspended?
Yes.
Right. So we had the two resolutions that were proposed, and we upheld one and not the other. And just for Board Member Howard's information, that was a set of circumstances where we came close to finding that the result of upholding the fine and the permanent ban would rise to the level of unconscionability, and that the purpose behind the ordinance didn't apply in that case. It was a very specific set of facts and a very difficult case, which you almost had to decide and break a tie. But that didn't happen in that case. So it was unlike this case. It was a very specific set of facts. So at this time, I have no further comment about the case. And Mr. Howard, do you have any other comments?
Just to observe that the ineligibility is only for short-term rental. That is, it does not apply to long-term rental. So it is not an outright lifetime deprivation of a right to rent the property. It does apply to short-term, and it is permanent. I wanted to look very carefully at this communication from the appellant's agent. And again, I do see that this is a communication by the appellant's agent to the appellant, telling the appellant what the seller told him. It says the registration number is attached. So I suppose that happened.
It's attached to the current Airbnb ad, if
Yeah,
you need it.
yeah.
I think that they're referencing the
All right.
ad itself as a number.
Yeah, so
In our world of cut and paste.
I find that to be a very weak sort of not a very strong professional representation of what here is the legal situation of this property. I'm making this representation to you as a professional for your reliance and decision-making on it. I think it's kind of an offhand comment, and I think it probably warranted some further scrutiny for an issue that could have a consequence of this magnitude.
You mean you wouldn't rely on that as legal advice?
Professional advice of any kind. And that's enough said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howard.
Mr. Cleary, any final comments or questions for board members?
No, I appreciate the Vice Chair's comments and Mr. Chair, your comments and the city's comments in sorting this relatively new ordinance out. I appreciate the city attorney's comments, and I have no further comment.
Okay, so this time deliberations being completed by the board, I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Howard?
I'll move that we adopt Resolution 2A and 3A upholding the two actions.
And I'll second the motion.
Vice Chair Howard?
Aye.
Chair Reed?
Aye.
Board Member Cleary?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. Sir, to translate what just occurred in plain English, we did uphold the city's decision on both counts, both the permanent ban as well as the $5,000 fine. As you can tell, board members were definitely struggling with some of the facts in the case. And as you can tell, too, as citizens of the city of Palm Springs, there are cases where we do feel that it's difficult to impose penalties of this nature, of this serious nature, given the facts of the circumstances. But the city has left us no choice. The ordinance as it currently stands doesn't give us much discretion to entertain alternative solutions. So again, we encourage the city to share trends and facts in the various cases that we hear with city council, encourage them to reconsider whether they want to give this board some flexibility in imposing and upholding fines and penalties, especially given, I think, the very talented members on this board who have the ability to reasonably judge the facts and apply a penalty that may be more in line with the actions by the appellant. So, Mr. Howard?
Yeah, you know, that's, I feel a little discomfort every time that's mentioned because I want to make sure that the council receives a written report of every action of this board, and they have the opportunity to do that. They know what we are doing, which is implementing and enforcing the ordinance that they passed. We've been doing this for a long time, and if they want to make a change, they can make a change. And I don't know that they want our advice or need our advice. And in fact, I don't know if there's any unanimity among the members of this board what that advice would be. We don't deliberate that. We don't talk about it because it's not our it's not within our jurisdiction. We are not a legislative body. So I don't like to leave any impression that we as a board are in favor of any kind of toughening of the ordinance or more leniency in the ordinance. I believe our ordinance does say that we have the ability, doesn't it, somewhere in there, that we can make recommendations?
Correct.
But,
Correct.
but we've never done so. We've never, that's never been an agenda item for us to substantively debate openly and vote on. So short of that, I think we're just pretty much left to hear these appeals and decide them.
No, I appreciate what you said, and I agree with a vast majority of your comments, Mr. Howard. But the one thing that I have felt strongly about as a board member is that if we make no recommendations, I'm very comfortable with that. But what I want is I want City Council to be more aware of the facts that have come before us and the application of the ordinance to those facts. And I again think the best way for that to occur would be for a City Council member to actually attend some of our hearings, or at least a session, to understand how the ordinance that they adopted is being applied. And then they can draw their own conclusions as elected members of our community. And we would just simply proceed as we normally do, and they could observe and draw their own conclusions. But if at any point in time any of my fellow board members feel that we should make any recommendations formally, we would obviously do so in an open forum and provide under our process for doing that and coming to I guess a unanimous conclusion about what recommendations to make. And I'd definitely be open to adding that to an agenda item in the future.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask for just a very 2-minute recess so me and the other clerk can swap out?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. This body stands in recess. Ladies and gentlemen, the Administrative Appeals Board special meeting is now back in session. We are now proceeding on to agenda item number 2. This is the appeal of the administrative citation A5537, an appeal of the administrative decision of a 2-year suspension of the vacation rental registration certificate for the property located at 1220 South Mateo in Palm Springs. I understand that Six Star Vacation Rental or Vacation Homes LLC represents this property. So I ask, apologize, thank you. I ask if there's a representative or the homeowner present to present to the board. Yes, sir.
I'm the owner.
Okay, very good. Have you filled out a speaker's card?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. So at this time, we will turn the case over to the city for presentation, and we'll be right back to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Reed and members of the board. As in previous hearings, we do hear suspension, the suspensions that the city issues to vacation rentals. The municipal code does state under third administrative citation in a 12-month period, the city manager shall issue a suspension of a vacation rental permit. Through administrative procedure, when a third citation is issued, as an example of this case, that third administrative citation is heard alongside with a suspension. So we're going to be looking at administrative citation A5537 and the suspension of the vacation rental certificate for 2 years for the property at 1220 South San Mateo. Under staff analysis, the third citation was issued on May 21st, 2018. That citation was issued for trash containers in public view. You can find the details of that citation on page 17 and 18 of your packets. The second citation that was issued to the same location, citation number A5320, was issued on January 16, 2018 to a tenant for music audible across property lines. That administrative citation was appealed by the tenant, and the independent hearing officer upheld the city's decision in regarding issuance of that administrative citation. And the first citation for this property in a 12-month period was issued on January 3rd. That citation is A7310. That citation, just like the third citation, was issued for trash containers in public view. That administrative citation was appealed by the homeowner in front of the independent hearing officer. The independent hearing officer denied the appeal, and they upheld the city's decision and let the citation stand. Administrative citation that is being appealed here today, number A5537. The details of that citation, that on Friday, May 25th, 2018, at 3:40 p.m., the vacation rental hotline received a complaint for a registered vacation rental property with the address of 1220 South San Mateo in Palm Springs. The complaint that was filed stated the trash cans are outside all week. The designated trash pickup day for this address is Thursday. I would like to note that in your staff report, there is a correction. On page number 3 of your staff report, on the paragraph where it says number 1, instead of Tuesday, it states Thursday. That is a Tuesday. So trash pickup for this property is on a Tuesday, not a Thursday. The vacation rental dispatched a code compliance officer to the location. Code compliance officer arrived at the property approximately 4:10 p.m., witnessed the violation, they documented the violation, took photographs, and proceeded to issue administrative citation A5537 for the violation of Palm Springs Municipal Code 5.25070 Section K for trash visible in public view. That citation was issued to Six Star Vacation Homes, which is the entity on title. There's additional documents that were presented to the board. I would just like to point out that the packet with this picture contains the report from the code officer and reports the photographs of the violation. That is the additional, that is item 2A. So based on the 3 citations that were issued in a 12-month period, a suspension of the vacation rental registration certificate was issued by the Vacation Rental Compliance Department with effective date. That effective date is incorrect, it's in December 2017. What is it? What did I say, December 27th? There was a suspension. I apologize. It was, give me 1 second, I apologize. That effective date of the suspension began on June 28, 2018 through June 28, 2020. That completes the staff report. I would like to ask, with the permission of Chairman and the board, I would like to call up initially the code compliance officer that issued the citation, and also I would like to call up Chris Cunningham of Palm Springs Disposal Service as well to give us information on the level of service that Palm Springs Disposal provides to vacation rental homes.
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Reed. Officer Clifford, could you please join us?
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Could you please state your name and your position within the city of Palm Springs for the record?
Yes, my name is Patrick Clifford, and I work for the Code Compliance Enforcement Division of the Vacation Rental Compliance Department.
Great, thank you. Are you familiar with issuing citation A5537?
Yes, I am.
Right. Could you tell us a little bit about it and your report?
Yeah, so on May 25th, around 3:56 p.m., I received a call from our 24-hour hotline regarding property 1220 San Mateo with a complaint stating that the trash cans are outside all week. I did go to the property and observed from the front property line along San Mateo, 2 trash containers visible from the front property line. And I did go to the property to see if guests were present, and I did knock on the door, and no one answered the door. I did return to the office and then issued the citation through mail to the owners on title, or to the agency, I'm sorry.
To the owner in title, right?
Yeah.
The owner on title is 6 Star Vacation Homes LLC, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. So to confirm, the trash cans were visible from standing on South San Mateo Road.
Yes, that's correct. I was standing on San Mateo Road, and just directly looking at the house, you can see the 2 containers.
Okay, thank you. I have no further question. Does the board wish to ask any questions at this time?
Sir, I have a couple of questions for you. This is a photograph that was tendered by the city to the board. Is this an accurate representation of what you observed on the day that you just testified about?
That's actually a photo that I took, yes.
Okay. And there's a third photo in our packet, I'll show this to my fellow board members, that has a mailbox and some hedges out front. Is this an accurate representation of what you observed in the front of the home on the day in question?
Yes, we do like to take pictures of an address. That way we can document that we're there at the property.
Okay. In enforcing this provision in the vacation rental ordinance, subsection K, that addresses trash and refuse, is it the practice of your department to cite for any trash containers that are visible but under an enclosed area such as this one here? So in other words, is the fact that the trash containers are under an enclosed area, an awning of the home, is that at all relevant to your application of the ordinance?
From this one, no, we would look at if it's behind a gate, not visible, but under a carport, an awning or anything, we would cite in on any cases that came to our attention with that.
Okay. And when you're measuring visibility, where do you typically place yourself when you're observing to decide whether you can see the garbage cans?
The property lines, the front property line in this case as well.
Okay, so you're on the street then, in front of the home?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Howard, any questions? Mr. Cleary?
Can I see the pictures?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Howard.
Chairman Reed, may I just read the section of the ordinance for further clarification? It's applicable in this matter. Is that okay with you, Chairman? Sure. The Section K of Palm Spring of the vacation rental ordinance under Section 5.25070, which is titled Operational Requirements and Standard Conditions. It says trash and refuse shall not be left stored within public view, except in proper containers for the purpose of collection by the collectors between the hours of 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. on scheduled trash collection days. The owners of the vacation rental unit shall use reasonably prudent business practices to ensure compliance with all provisions of Chapter 6.04 of Municipal Code, which is titled Waste Disposal and Diversion, and shall provide walk-in service, or as may otherwise be approved by the enforcement official. And for the record, there is no other service other than walk-in service that's approved by the Vacational Compliance Department or by the Office of City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cleary, Mr. Howard, do you have any questions for the city or for the enforcement officer?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Does the, the ordinance that was just read, the prohibited objects are trash and refuse. Do we see trash or refuse in these photographs?
No, the photographs are just the containers.
And did you see any trash or refuse?
I did not go and open up the trash or look around the trash bins at that time.
Why did you issue this citation?
It is a practice in our department that trash containers are still applicable to the same ordinance. So if containers are visible from the street or public view, we do issue citations, and that's common practice in our department.
Okay.
Mr. Cleary?
So just to clarify, Mr. Clifford, the violation is as depicted in the photographs? This is the
Yes,
violation?
what we see here in the pictures is exactly what I seen when I arrived and assumed to be the violation.
And just for the record, the photographs are, it looks like a carport,
Yeah, it's a carport.
and it's darkened in there, and it really can't tell, but is it fair to say that the trash containers are underneath the carport?
It is, and there's a second picture as well that you can see. Kind of illuminates the shadow a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, Vice Chair Howard just gave me the zoomed version. And you can see it looks like a dark object there. That must be the trash container.
Yeah, there's two trash containers.
Up against the wall under the carport.
Yeah, there's a blue one and a brown one.
And the, okay, all right. And this is walk-up service? I've looked at some of the responses. So this homeowner subscribes to walk-in service?
From my understanding, that's correct. All vacation rentals should have the walk-up service. Yeah, I defer to my directors if they did or did not have it at that time.
That is correct. Whenever a vacation rental compliance department issues a permit, Palm Springs Disposal Service is notified immediately, the day the permit is issued, that that walk-up service shall be established. And I do have Mr. Chris Cunningham from Palm Springs Disposal Service here,
Okay.
and I would like to bring him up as well for any questions that you may have and some explanation that I would like him to provide.
Thank you.
Any additional questions of Officer Clifford?
Thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate your
much.
time. Thanks.
I'd like to call up Chris Cunningham from Palm Springs Disposal Service. Great, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, sir. We'll permit the city official to ask questions initially, and then the board members may have questions for you.
Sure, thank you. Could you please state your name and your position within Palm Springs Disposal Service?
My name is Chris Cunningham, and I'm a customer service representative for Palm Springs Disposal Services.
Great, thank you. I'm just gonna ask a couple of questions. This property, according to your records, does it have walk-up service?
It does.
Okay. How long has that service been in effect? Did you know?
April of last year, 2017.
Okay, great. At this location, does the property, does your staff access the trash cans in a particular place? Could you speak about?
Yeah, they're all different. I mean, you've got probably 2,500 or 3,000 walk-in services. And everything's different. But typically, it's up the driveway, behind a gate, or on the side of a garage, or in a little alcove where you can't see it. This particular address is up the driveway, near the back gate. There's a pedestrian door that you could walk through. There's no locking devices on it, so it's easy access. It's just a latch on the door. Our crews are instructed to go up that driveway, back of the gate, pull them down, and then put them back where they got them from at the end of the day.
Thank you. Could you explain to us what is walk-up service? What does it entail?
It's pretty much our staff going into the backyards or side yards to collect the trash, green waste, and recycling, pull that out to the curb, have the collection vehicle pick it up, and then later on in the day, those carts are returned by a scout driver.
Thank you. And for this address, so 1220 South San Mateo, is the pickup day Tuesday? Can you confirm that?
It is Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. The staff on this route, you have, I assume, hundreds of people working. On this route, do you know in particular the individuals who work this route? Do you know who they are and how long have they been doing this?
These two staff members have been around for a long time, but since our new contract went into effect in 2014, it's been the same driver, so over 4 years.
Wow. And according to your records, and I'm sure you have some kind of system, do you have history of any complaints, any issues, lack of access to the gate, any of that sort regarding to this account?
None at all. There's only been one issue that we were called on, and it was we could not pick up because a car had blocked the entranceway into the gate, so we couldn't get through there. And then we were called a few days later to do an extra pickup for them, which we did, and then replace the cart back behind the gate. That was the only issues we've had since April of 2017.
Okay. Thank you. So is there a limitation of length for this particular service you guys would go to pick up trash cans? Is my question.
No, there's not. There would just be an extra fee if it was over 50 feet.
Okay. Does this account carry that extra fee?
No, it does not.
Okay. Thank you. To best of your knowledge, do you recall any issues where the cans would not be put behind the gate at this location, or?
At this location, we've never had any issues. Our drivers carry around a route list with them, and it shows every walk-in address, and it shows special instructions in case there's a lock or a combination lock that they can get into. If there are issues, they usually write it down on this route list and then put it into the notes in our system.
You talked about that the route driver has been around for 4 years. Is there certain trainings that they go through?
Yeah, usually when they start a route, these two guys have been with us for many years, so they know all the routes, but we shifted routes around during the new contract. So once a month, we have a meeting with all the walk-in drivers and in regards, we talk about vacation homes, the importance of that, and all the other walk-ins. So that's done once a month. And then if we have a new hire, he'll sit in with one of the crew members that are familiar with the route and ride with him for usually a few weeks before he's ready to start his own route.
Okay, great, thank you. Chris, thank you. I have no further questions. Mr. Cunningham, Chairman Reed and the board.
I have no questions, Mr. Howard.
Yes, sir. Do you have these photographs?
I do not.
Could we make those available? Have you been to this property?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the place where the containers are ordinarily kept?
Yeah.
At this property? And can we see that on these photographs?
The gate to the left of the carport.
I see a wooden fence and I see two black hinges. And so that's a gate?
That would be the gate.
And ordinarily, you would expect these containers to be stored behind that gate, is that correct?
Yes, they would need to be, yes. That's what's indicated in the route list.
And would your company's retrieval of those containers from behind that gate be within the level of service that's subscribed to at that address?
Yes.
The so-called walk-up service?
Yes.
Do you know of any reason that, any reason with regard to the timely pickup of trash that the containers at this address would need to be outside in front of that fence?
No, there's a number of things that we contend with on the vacation homes or walk-ins in general. There's cleaning services, there's pool guys, there's gardeners. There's a lot of things that we contend with. I don't see a reason why our guys would have those out there, because they're not supposed to. They're supposed to be very specific to the route list, but those are the things that we contend with.
But what I had in mind was the occupants of the residence.
Oh, right.
They would be, if I understand your testimony, those containers could be left behind the fence and without impairing your company's ability to pick them up and service the property. Is that correct?
Yeah,
You'd go behind the fence?
we go
Bring
behind
them
the
out,
fence.
dump them, put them back, close the gate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cleary?
No questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that you do have 2 additional documents that were distributed. This one, it's this color. It's kind of highlighted. Relating to refuse, this is actually rental rules for this particular vacation rental. We can get your copy. Mr.
I have it here.
Yeah, okay. Just would like to bring your attention to page number 2 and page number 4 of those 2 particular rental rules. These rental rules were sent in with prior administrative citations during their appeal. It's rental rules for this particular vacation rental. So I want to make sure you guys have a copy of that. And I apologize, but in the packet that has the code officer Clifford's report, there is a log of number of hotline calls we've received on the property. And it's actually page number 4. I apologize that it made its way into there. It was supposed to be a separate exhibit. It's on the pictures packet, and I can, it's page number 4 in the pictures packet. I apologize. This is what it looks like. So page 4, it's in the back.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So that, I wanted to show the volume of calls that this vacation rental has been called in on to the vacation rental hotline. And again, as we've always told, that these calls are, do we protect the confidentiality of the caller? In this particular case, we've only identified them with caller A, B, C, or D, or an unidentified caller. Just wanted to make sure that you have that as well. And the only thing, the reason why administrative citation was issued is because the trash containers were stored in public view on a non-trash pickup day. The trash pickup day at this location is on a Tuesday, and the complaint was called in on a Friday. And as my staff report says, the individual who filed the complaint did state that trash cans were out all week. So violation was witnessed on Friday. The trash pickup date is on a Tuesday. That concludes my report, and I'm available for any questions, Chairman Reed or members of the board.
One question I had, you had highlighted the number of calls that were made. My understanding from this document, if I'm reading it correctly, is that out of the 16 calls that were made, 3 were substantiated. The other 13 did not result in a finding or citation, correct?
That is correct. They were not. I would also like to know that if you look at call number 3 and call number 16, they're for a loud pool pump. We don't get those very often. And as a courtesy, It is not a violation of the Vacation Rental Municipal Code. As a courtesy to our residents, we will pick up the phone and we will contact the management and say, we got a complaint. Would you guys please ask your vendor to take a look and see if everything's functioning as it should be? So, and, I'm sorry? Yeah. Yeah. And so, just, and my partner, Ms. Severin, this is the volume of citations to calls in this particular spreadsheet follows a pattern that we see across the entire city. It's usually 1 out of 5. 1 out of 5 calls carries an administrative citation, or 1 out of 4, and it varies depending on the time of the year and the season. And we know that information because we do quarterly hotline call analysis, and we publish it on our website for public consumption.
And Mr. Stark, you mentioned there was a situation of a trash or something on the curb over the weekend. There was some trash cans that had been left out, and it was, the trash pickup day was Tuesday, but they were out since Friday?
Correct. What I stated is that this administrative citation and the complaint came in on a Friday.
Okay.
And on a Friday, the trash containers were visible in public, from the public view, on a non-trash pickup day. The trash pickup day for this property is on a Tuesday. When the Palm Springs disposal, as Mr. Cunningham stated, they come in, they take the trash cans out on a Tuesday. By end of day on Tuesday, they put the trash cans back into where they've been instructed to do so. And this violation happened on a Friday. So it was a non-pickup.
I see.
Trash days.
And the photographs and everything from Mr. Clifford, that was on the Friday?
That is correct. Those were the pictures, and report was all together. The pictures I provided in a larger format because they're very hard to read on the actual report. That's also, they're the identical pictures from his report.
So it's my understanding that from his testimony, correct me if I'm wrong, is that they pick up and replace the trash cans where they find them. Not, or like, for example, I guess the violation is that the trash cans were out in the carport. They would remove the trash cans. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out logically what happened. The trash people found the trash containers in the carport and emptied them and replaced them in the carport?
I cannot speak to the specific effect, what trash service occurred and what transpired at that time. What I wanted, Chairman Reed and the members of the board to hear is from directly from Palm Springs Disposal Services, what their protocol is and what is it that they do when it is a pickup, when it's a walk-up service.
Okay.
So and I just want to make sure that you are clear that, and is Mr. Cunningham here? Yeah. Okay. And please correct me if I'm wrong, that you do have a truck that's just dedicated. You do have staff that's dedicated that comes on the property, pulls the trash bins to the street level, correct?
Yes.
And then you have the actual trash truck dump those bins. Trash truck continues on its route, and another, what you call a scout, you call it a scout car.
Yes.
It comes and they put the trash bins back where they originally pulled them out from.
From originally where they got, and I know exactly where you're going with this too. They'll go and pick them up where they came from. Usually they're always in the same place, but if they're not, they're specifically instructed to take it back to a certain place. In this case, it's behind the gate.
Okay. So if they retrieved it from the carport, but it was supposed to always be behind the gate, they would have replaced it back behind the gate?
That is what they are supposed to do.
Okay, and so the violation is that it wouldn't have been back behind the gate till the Tuesday when they came?
Right, if we arrived, yes.
And we're just inferring, right, because you have no direct evidence or no direct knowledge of this particular week, what happened on Tuesday on trash day and why those were there on Friday, correct?
Right. Only there was no issues, yeah.
So we're just inferring from a pattern of behavior that you believe is what is exhibited at this property?
Yes,
Okay.
from what we're looking at here in our notes, yes, there's been no issues.
I did want to ask a question. You had mentioned that the rules that you provided to us were relevant. I guess I was confused about why these rules are relevant because it's an instruction to the renter, don't take the trash cans to the curb. And it talks about that. And I was wondering, how is that relevant to this case? Because we don't have curbside issues.
We do not. The reason why I provided this is that there's conflicting information in guest contracts on two separate occasions. If you took a look at page 2, it states do not take trash cans to the curb under any circumstances, a number 8.
Right.
And that particular contract was provided during an appeal for the first trash citation on January 3rd. On the second citation that was issued on January 16th, that section says trash day is Tuesday. If you are a guest in a home on a trash day, please make sure that the 3 trash receptacles on the side of the home are placed on a curb Monday night, Tuesday morning for pickup. It is our department's policy to advise operators and owners, don't have your guests touch the trash can. So I wanted to show that there are guest rules that are inconsistent.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Oh, I see.
Mr. Howard, do you have further questions for the city?
So in terms of enforcement of subsection K, the enforcement effort and determination of a violation has no interest in whether a container is empty or containing trash.
Unfortunately, municipal code does not speak to that effect, and we attempt to follow it to the way it's written as per our guidance from the city attorney's office. So I would not be able to answer if it's full or empty.
All right.
I have one more question. On the exhibit that you gave to us that has the photographs, I guess it would be page 5. Under the section that says, upon arrival, found the following, which in other words would be a summary, I guess, of the code enforcement officer's findings. It says trash visible from the street.
Correct. And trash visible from a street view is comes out of a drop-down menu on that particular form, and it should really say trash containers. When we were originally setting up the form, we omitted trash containers visible from a street point of view.
Okay, thank
So
you.
that's
helpful to let us know it's a drop-down, and that's.
That is correct. It's a drop-down menu with preset options, and the code officers don't have the ability to edit that drop-down menu. We do encourage our staff, if they do find an issue with the form, to let us know right away, and we do change it immediately.
Thank you. Mr. Clare, do you have further questions for the city?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Howard? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sir. Okay, at this time, we'll turn to the homeowner. Sir, if you'd please come forward, and if you're ready to present. Did you fill out a speaker's card, a brown form?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, sir, as you probably heard me instruct the other homeowner, the appellant has 10 minutes to present your case to the board, and then after that 10-minute presentation, we may ask questions or engage you in discussion that might extend your time, but you have 10 minutes to present to us any evidence you'd like.
Appreciate
So,
that.
when you're ready, please proceed.
So I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Thank you, sir.
I heard a lot. I didn't take notes during the testimony. May I ask a question before I begin?
You may.
Is it a better approach to answer some of the claims made by code enforcement, or is it better just to present my
Sir,
case?
we don't advise you as to
Okay.
how to present, but we do encourage you to, if you need a moment to think about how you want to proceed, we would be more than happy to stop the clock and give you a moment. But however you feel is most appropriate to educate us about your position.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
May I take a moment?
Certainly.
Thank you. Before I begin, may I see the photos and the call log, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Let it be noted for the record that copies are available next to the agenda. The city clerk did provide them.
Mr. Howard, Mr. Clear, do you both have copies of the photos?
I borrowed Mr. Howard's
Okay.
copies.
Can we get another copy for the board, please? Thank you. Thank you.
You do have this.
Yeah, I do have that.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. I now have a copy of the photos.
May I ask another question, please?
Yes, sir.
I thought I heard, for privacy purposes, callers were marked A, B, C, D, and the like. Would it be fair to assume that if there was caller A, that might be one individual over and over again? Or is that a unique caller ID, or is that?
Sir, the way this would work is since you're the appellant, you're a party to the action, you don't have the ability to ask questions of the city, but you can let the board know that that is a concern that you may have, and that's something that we can address to the city on their rebuttal.
Sorry.
So you could feel free to let us know that that's a concern of yours or you have a question about it.
Sorry.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the
Thank you, sir.
recess.
Please proceed.
Upon receiving the first citation for refuse left at the curb, I was provided pictures, we paid the fine, we appealed based upon a holiday day, meaning there was a holiday on Monday, didn't know that trash wasn't going to be delayed a day. The tenant at the time, our guest, brought the trash cans to the curb. It wasn't picked up. We were cited. We paid. Since that point, we've been very, very careful, as Chris mentioned. We don't lock the gate. The trash cans are there to be picked up for the service that we pay for, emptied, and returned. I'd like to testify that on Tuesday, our house manager sat outside this yesterday from 8 in the morning till 5, and nobody came to the property to pick up trash. The cans were behind the gate the entire time. They were never emptied. They were actually empty because we didn't have any guests. We don't have guests due to currently being on suspension. And so the way I'd like to approach my defense, my appeal, is that I took affidavits, they should be in your packet, of anybody and everybody who, quote unquote, is under my employ to service my property. 2 house managers, 2 gardeners, pool service, everybody that Chris spoke about. And I want to testify also, we take great diligence, both how we operate the business, how we treat the guest, and I know I'm not supposed to speak to it, but I would say we're very, from my perspective, collaborative with the city, with the Vacation Rental Compliance Division, in trying to do not only what's necessary and required, but go a step above and beyond. And I'll also say they've been very supportive. Your website is very informative. Every time we call, Boris picks up, returns my call in an hour, and it's been wonderful. So in order to keep this under 10 minutes, I want to also maybe point out that this was actually a corrective action taken after the first citation to really notify the guests that please do not touch the trash cans. I'm going fast. I don't know how long 10 minutes is. This is a document that basically supports Chris's testimony that the drivers come by. They get it from behind the gate. They get the trash cans from behind the gate. They take it to the curb. They're emptied. They put them away. We have also put in another corrective action. Besides what's in our rental rules for the house guests, we have a policy for each one of our service providers that works for us that when they're out and in the neighborhood, if they see anything that could cause a violation, it's okay.
Please proceed.
They are instructed to repair and/or correct anything that could be a violation. As we were skating on thin ice with 2, we have had all the batches battened down the hatches, okay? I don't know that I really want to present a defense that's a finger-pointing defense. So I'd like to understand if potentially we're being adversely selected by a neighbor, if that caller is a individual and unique caller. I present it as part of evidence. It's public information. I think you can go search Palm Springs Disposal Service. There have obviously been other owners. There have been other residents of the community that feel that that service isn't all that it's cracked up to be. And I brought or submitted calendars with your contact summaries to just prove that at no time during this week in May, from, if you want to begin the Sunday of the, well, let's begin Tuesday the 22nd, which is trash day, until the 31st of May, nobody was in our property from a guest's perspective, so nobody was staying there or renting the property. You have the affidavits in my packet that speak to no service provider of ours has ever touched our trash cans and certainly not left them in public view. And so without proof and without providing a defense that puts me in a position to accuse others, I'm trying to present some facts and a fact pattern that says, I believe we've done everything above and beyond what is required under the ordinance, and then certainly in a best efforts to correctively prohibit anything like this from happening, and certainly put extraordinary measures in place so that something like this is prevented before it happens, before we're sitting here and I'm in a position to not only be fined, but certainly lose and be suspended for 2 years from operating within the city. I think that concludes my testimony.
You still have 3 minutes if you'd like.
You know, I respectfully, especially after we paid Regina to sit outside of the house all day Tuesday and didn't see the service, I feel like I don't have proof. It's her word. It's their world. It's certainly proof we paid for the service, and we paid for the service for a very long time. Does the penalty